Take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
CannabisRadio.com presents The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Hey, this is great, man.
Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Tuesday, April 19th, 2016, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. And if you're wondering why I'm being so quiet, it is because I am currently in an overflow conference room at the United Nations, where we just finished watching the first session of the United Nations General Assembly Special Session to discuss the global war on drugs. This session was called by the Latin American and South American countries that are disproportionately feeling the terrible devastation in terms of murder and kidnapping and corruption due to the war on drugs. And they're all very concerned because other countries like Uruguay and Spain have adopted non-punitive policies. And of course, the 24 U.S. states with medical cannabis and 4 U.S. states with legalized cannabis have created a dissonance at the international level where these producer and trafficking countries can no longer see why they should suffer while the U.S. and other countries are benefiting from this change in prohibitionary thinking. So the United Nations has adopted a outcome document ahead of all of these sessions. This is supposedly a consensus document on the direction of global drug policy, but due to the intransigence of countries like Indonesia, Singapore, China, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and others that still maintain massive levels of human rights abuses, and especially the death penalty for drug violations, due to their intransigence, the consensus document fails to address the death penalty for drug crimes, to address harm reduction in the adoption of drug policy. So country after country stood to criticize the United Nations document and to call on an end to the death penalty and to get global drug policies in line with the International Declaration of Human Rights that the United Nations supports. We'll be bringing you coverage of this all week. I do have to tell you that I'm pre-recording this, and the rest of today's shows will have to, or rest of this week's shows will be pre-recorded, and I won't be able to do the usual production on the segments with intros and outros just due to a lack of internet and recording time. And just I'm so busy out here. So I'm going to be giving you some of the raw files that I've recorded from some of my most recent adventures. From today, I'm going to bring you a recording of activists from South America in the Andean region who are calling for the acceptance of the native use of coca leaf in their country and indigenous plants for cultural and traditional purposes in general. That's the only audio I have recorded from today. I'll be going out later today to some demonstrations to get you some audio from tomorrow. I'm not allowed to record the audio of the United Nations sessions, unfortunately, because I do not have that media accreditation. So I'll also be bringing you some audio from the other events I've been attending, most specifically Mark Kleiman's and Botec's Cannabis Science and Policy Summit that took place at the City University of New York over the past couple of days. Thank you all for your support, and especially thank you who have donated to the Russ Belville Show all these years to make this reporting from the United Nations possible. I'm Radical Russ. I'm going to give you some of the recordings now, and until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
When you are starting up a medical cannabis business, you want a fired-up lawyer who understands the needs of cannabis consumers. The law office of Lauren Vasquez is your fired-up lawyer for the cannabis industry. Visit her website, fireduplawyer.com, or call 1-855-MMJ-LAWS for more information. That's 855-665-5297 for Lauren Vasquez, your fired up lawyer, or email firedupLawyer@gmail.com.
Educator, author, and advocate Dr. Mitch Earlywine is here to tackle the burning issues.
And I'm here to clear up the myths about cannabis and burn them away with science.
CannabisRadio.com presents a no-holds-barred platform that seeks to redefine and revolutionize the entire scope of the cannabis culture while opening the door for more to join the cannabis crusade.
Dr. Kevin Hill.
You can't ignore the fact that, like alcohol, most people who use don't have a problem. So I think that you need to think about policy in that way while educating people properly about marijuana. I think that's the way to go.
Burning Issues, only on CannabisRadio.com.
Dr. Dabber, hurry! Its temperature is shooting past 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's burning up.
I'm afraid for this little guy, it's just too late.
What caused the problem?
Only Dr. Dabber can maintain the perfect temperature for a smooth-tasting, slower burn. This standard vaporizer lost all of its health benefits, sending it up in smoke.
So you're telling me that most vapor pens burn so hot they produce smoke, not vapor?
Correct. Keep away from those standard vaporizer pens and turn to Dr. Dabber. Doctor's orders.
Less heat, more flavor.
Activism begins with ACT. The Russ Belville Show features the stories of hardworking grassroots activists working for an end to prohibition in today's activist agenda.
Delegates to the United Nations Special Session, please pay attention to the message from the people of the world. Allow us to cultivate the plants that are important to us. Please allow us to cultivate the plants that are important to us. There is no other option. We're cultivating them anyway. Thank you.
Bueno, creo que nosotros estamos aquí en Nueva York frente a las Naciones Unidas.
I think we are here across from United Nations.
Para que las Naciones Unidas saquen de la lista negra a la hoja de coca.
For the United Nations to take away the coca leaf from the black list.
Todas las drogas deben ser castigadas.
Every drug should be punished.
Pero no la sagrada hoja de coca.
But not the sacred coca leaf.
Desde nuestros antepasados, desde los incas, los mayas, los aztecas, los aymaras, los quechuas,
the Incas, the Aztecas,
consumieron la hoja de coca.
They all consume the coca leaf.
Por eso queremos que esta hoja de coca siga viviendo. Mientras viva el aymara, el indio, el quechua, seguirá la hoja de coca para salvar al planeta Tierra.
While we all the indigenous people live, we should save the hoja de coca to save Mother Earth.
Por eso es que hombres y mujeres debemos luchar para salvar al planeta Tierra.
That's the reason why men and women, we all should fight to save the planet.
El planeta Tierra es de los seres humanos y los seres humanos debemos salvar con la sagrada hoja de coca, ya que la Universidad de Harvard ha dicho que tiene todos los elementos químicos que el ser humano necesita.
That's the reason we should save it, because already Harvard University, and that was back in the 70s, already knew how many good nutritional value is this sacred plant. It's the highest in calcium in the world, by the way, so it cures a lot of things such as osteoporosis, and there's one more reason and many more reasons. It's good for your throat, your stomach, it will cure a lot of ailments. That's the reason we should stand by it.
Que la hoja de coca es parte de la conversación, parte del diálogo. Si no hay hoja de coca, no hay diálogo, no hay conversación. Por eso es que esta hoja sagrada es de la familia.
And it's also part of the dialogue. If we cannot even dialogue, we cannot even have a conversation if we don't have our coca leaf in front of us. It's part of our family.
Que todos los trabajadores, especialmente las amas de casa, los mineros, deben consumir la hoja de coca. Por eso es que los mineros de Bolivia siguen viviendo, siguen existiendo gracias a la hoja de coca.
that's the reason why we all, from housewives to everybody, especially mining people in Peru and Bolivia and in all these countries, they still use the coca leaf because it's the only plant that allows them to survive.
Por eso es de que esto es parte de la familia, parte del ser humano, y nosotros debemos seguir parte de la Pachamama, de la Madre Tierra.
So this is part of the family, part of our humans, so it's part of the Pachamama, which is Mother Earth.
Madre Tierra. Un jayaya.
Jayaya.
Mira la hoja de coca.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
With over 6 years of experience in the industry, New Era CPAs is one of the nation's leading cannabis accounting firms, helping hundreds of growers, dispensaries, and ancillary companies with their tax, legal, and business strategies. New Era CPAs offices cover the West Coast from Seattle to San Diego, and their skilled team is always available to help you take your business to the next level. Visit neweracpas.com for more info and set up a consultation. Welcome to the New Era.
Ganjapreneur.com, your guide to the cannabis business world. Ganjapreneur.com is a comprehensive resource for cannabis professionals and entrepreneurs. Download the Ganjapreneur app on your smartphone or tablet to catch up on cannabis industry news, scroll through our daily job listings, and learn about successful cannabis companies, executives, and investors. Ganjapreneur.com, helping Ganjapreneurs grow.
Reforming America's marijuana prohibition laws takes education, lobbying, and voting. From Washington, D.C. to your state capital to your city hall, marijuana law reform involves all levels of civic life. Learn how you can make your impact with elected officials as we take a look at our government at work.
So it's now my honor to introduce Svatopluk Yermachek, the Minister for Health of the Czech Republic, who will greet us and give us some thoughts about how we should be moving in this direction. Minister.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear friends and colleagues, first of all, let me thank you for the honor given to me by the opportunity to address such an important meeting of excellent scientists, researchers, journalists, business persons, and opinion makers. I appreciate it deeply. I also want to thank the organizers for the very idea to hold this conference on the eve of Angas 2016, where I will be representing my country. I understand this conference is important for the United States, given the current wave of legalization of cannabis and products based on cannabis for recreational purposes, and given the torrent of US states that have legalized cannabis for medical purposes. However, this is important not only for US. There is, let's say, a bit of global embarrassment regarding the legalization of so-called recreational cannabis, and I share it to a certain extent. As a Minister of Health of my country, I do not feel we have managed to minimize the harms of alcohol and tobacco use so far, and I wonder if we really can make it with cannabis as yet another legal drug. However, it is clear that states and countries that have decided to legalize cannabis will do so. There are not only the US, everybody here knows the mixed legal and illegal model of the Kingdom of Netherlands that is as much as 40 years old. The Eastern Republic of Uruguay launched full legalization of cannabis 2 years ago, and now Canada, the second largest country in the world, announced its plan to do so too. As much as I can tell you from the politician's point of view, this is serious, and it should be evaluated seriously so the rest of the world can learn from the evaluations of these experimental pilot models and reflect it in their own cannabis policies. Thus, for me, the science that would monitor, analyze, and report on these experiments, it is of utmost importance. Let me tell you that it may be more important for me than for some other politicians. The Czech Republic has a long record of drug policy that is fundamentally steered by science. Every single change in Czech drug policy that we have undertaken has been evaluated independently by scientific research, and the findings were debated by Czech governments, regardless if they were politically rightish or leftish. Frankly, I'm kind of proud on it. It was the science that started the process of legalization of medical cannabis in my country. I have to admit that previous governments needed some kick from the civil society. To understand that to make the medical cannabis available to patients and to include it into medical curricula is the only way how to pull ill and desperate people from the criminal market and from the threat of criminalization. However, I am not ashamed with it. That is why a non-governmental sector is part of democratic societies. Actually, I am happy with it. United States have their Americans for Safe Access. Czech Republic has its COPAC, both patients' organizations that are constantly reminding politicians that there is a problem with human rights of patients and with law and bylaws not fully responding to scientific knowledge timely. The aquarium of everyday politics is wild and very much absorbed with itself. It is NGOs like ASA and COPAC that make us to look and reach into the real world. As the Czech Minister of Health, I am proud the USA and Czech Republic have allied in medical cannabis science recently. Since December 2015, Prague is hosting the International Cannabis and Cannabinoids Institute, bringing together Czech scientists in medical cannabis, a scientific area of long tradition in my country, with significant US investments to support the basic and clinical research and other scientific efforts in medical cannabis and cannabinoids using the cutting-edge Czech research infrastructure. For me, there is no more question if to legalize and research medical cannabis. It is a part of mainstream medical science already and one of the most promising medical research areas. Now, the drug policy science faces another challenge. It is independent, reliable science only that should steer countries in their political decision if to follow the trends of liberalization of cannabis control or not, and if so, how to do it so that the welfare of their citizens is improved and not worsened. You probably understand that I will carefully observe the studies and analysis that would be presenting during this important conference, and that I will do my best to reflect it in the policy of my country and in the global drug control policy as well. I firmly believe that the democratic policy should be massively informed by science, not really driven by science, because policy and politics are somehow more complex than science. I'm not joking. Sometimes I advise scientists to clear rules and ethics they can stick to. This is why I appreciate so much the opportunity to be here with you and ask you for more of the science sounds analysis, and more of using the language that would be both scientifically correct and understandable for interested layperson like myself. Sadly, I cannot stay at your fascinating conference for too long, by far not as long as I would wish to. However, there is a Czech presence staying here, and I will be briefed by them, I promise. I wish you success with your conference and I thank you for your kind attention.
Boot to the head.
Ow, you bullet me in the head!
Coming soon to a city near you, Cannabis Finance Boot Camp. Get all your cannabis accounting, legal, and compliance questions answered by their knowledgeable panel of industry experts who want to help your canna business boom. Whether you're a grower, dispensary operator, or a newcomer to the field, your canna business needs Cannabis Finance Boot Camp. For information on upcoming events, visit CannabisFinanceBootCamp.com.
Growing green to generate more green.
Hello to all you happy herbalizers, smiling trippy hippies, and everyone who believes in freedom and tolerance. This is The Grow Show, and I'm Kyle Cushman.
From food to fuel, from remedy to resource.
Welcome my guest, Ed Rosenthal, the guru of ganja. Let me ask you, right now I hear your lighter clicking. Are you smoking indoor or are you smoking sun-grown?
What am I smoking? I'm smoking concentrate.
Way to get out of the answer there. So you're truly like the king, right? You just clap your hands and somebody brings you a bowl and you're all set, right?
I wish that were the case.
The Grow Show with Kyle Cushman, only on CannabisRadio.com. Great websites today need expert web design and development and need to be e-commerce ready and mobile friendly. But building a marketable and profitable website can be an uphill climb. Ready to make your new website or replace your existing website? Think Orange as the new way to get in the black. Orange Hill Development works with Fortune 500 companies and offer the same top quality development service at a fraction of what other providers charge. Brands like Absolute, Carlsberg, and Nestea trust Orange Hill Development. Find out why you should trust your website with Orange Hill. Contact Orange Hill for a consultation today at orangehilldevelopment.com.
Promoting the end of adult cannabis prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It's even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more on this edition of Drug War Data Mining.
Good day, tokers and tokettes. Radical Russ back here at the Cannabis Policy Summit at City University of New York. And joining me here at the desk, we have John Hudak from the Brookings Institute. How you doing, John?
Oh, pretty good, Russ. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, we had you on the show just a little while ago talking about your latest white paper. Have you gotten a lot of great response off of that?
Oh, yeah, no, we've had some really great response from it here at the conference and around the country. People have really embraced an institution like ours, really engaging a policy area that typically think tanks aren't engaging, think tanks that are not advocacy organizations engaging. And so it's been really positive and something we're really proud of at Brookings.
You've been spending a lot of time researching this issue, and now sitting in some of these panels here and hearing some other experts discussing the issue. Do you find any points of contention, any disagreements, or does this fit along with what you've researched?
I mean, most of the disagreements we're hearing today are ones that are pretty dominant streams within the literature, within the discussion, within the broader conversation we have around legalization, whether it's for rec or for medical. What is, I think, the most enjoyable part, though, is all of these discussions, all of these disagreements are being done in a very respectful way. People aren't screaming at each other. People aren't Donald Trump. People aren't acting like it's DC. They're acting like they want to find the right answer. You hear a lot of different people, and someone has the right answer. Not everyone here does, but people are talking to each other like professionals, and I think that raises the caliber of cannabis policy in general. When people are having these conversations as professionals, as advocates, as researchers, and not just as people throwing themselves with all of the passion and all of the talking points that I think characterize other debates.
As we hear a lot of these discussions, they are ranging on a number of policy options for ending marijuana prohibition, comparing Uruguayan models and Spanish collective models. Even some people were talking longingly about how we used to think of Amsterdam as such the wild child out there in Europe, and now it's almost quaint how they do things in Amsterdam. What are your thoughts on some of these different models, and do you think with such a capitalism-heavy American economy that that'd even be possible?
Well, I think one of the benefits we're seeing is that typically we think of U.S. states as being the laboratories of democracy, but in reality we have the world now is a laboratory of democracy. We have so many different nations with different cultural dynamics, different personal dynamics, different historical trends, and now different cannabis policies. And one isn't going to be the right one, but you get to see bits and pieces because everyone is so different. Colorado is different than Washington, is different than Uruguay, is different than Portugal and the Netherlands. They're all attacking different problems sometimes, but they're doing it in different ways. And the best thing is we're learning from it. It's not just throwing away good models, or it's not just doing policy for the sake of doing it. We're learning a ton from these different models, for good and bad, and that can only mean good things in the future.
I'm interested in the fact that we've got legalization now in 4 U.S. states and had it for over 3 years now in 2 of them. And so far, from what I've seen, we haven't seen a great increase in harm, if any increases in harm, and maybe even some reductions in harm from people, not drinking and driving, or not using OxyContin or pain pills when they can switch out medical cannabis. So a lot of these discussions, when they talk about these public policies being centered on the idea of protecting the public, I often wonder, from what? Because have we seen any problems so far?
Yeah, so there's 2 points here. First, we haven't seen the sky-falling dynamics that prohibitionists predicted would happen with legalization, whether it be medical or especially with recreational. And so I think in some ways, as a policy analyst, you look at that and you think, well, that's a positive thing. The worst case scenario hasn't borne out. There are some data that suggest there are positive benefits. There are some data that suggest it's a wash. But it is still critically important to note that when you're looking at policy outcomes and policy consequences, that longer-term views are better. So the sky hasn't fallen yet. It probably won't fall. But it's not to say that we shouldn't look at the data long and hard and make sure that there aren't things that need correcting. There's probably going to be things that need correcting. We've seen it a little bit in the states already, and there's going to be more down the road. It doesn't mean the policy's broken. It actually means the policy's working if you respond to these challenges with better policy reforms.
There's some consideration in the discussions I've heard so far about the fact that, even now under the limited few states we've had with legalization, a lot of the dynamics of prohibition still exist. For example, the high price. And some of the concern is once you have a full national legalization and the economy of scale takes over and that prohibition risk is gone, prices crash, use goes up, and then the sky starts to fall. Is that a concern?
Well, I mean, that's certainly a concern, that prices fall and use goes up. But I think a lot of that perspective comes from this idea that marijuana isn't already in society. I mean, you can get weed for cheap if you want weed for cheap. You might not get it from a dispensary in Denver. You might get it from a guy down the street, but you're going to get it. So this idea that all of a sudden there are going to be this huge social change because all of a sudden there's inexpensive marijuana in America is a totally it's totally distanced from reality. Like I said, there's cheap weed if you want it, you just have to know where to find it. Legalizing in Colorado and Washington and Oregon and Alaska isn't changing that.
All right, well that's some good perspective. We're getting, and one of the things I like about this event is we're getting lots of perspectives from different organizations that have different goals in this, and I think it's helpful for us to be discussing with each other, and like you said, in a professional manner. John, what's next for you? Is there another study or paper that you're working on?
Well, I'm happy to say that I just finished up edits on a book on the history of marijuana policy. It'll be out in the late summer, early fall. It's called Marijuana: A Short History. You can pre-order it on Amazon. It's a short read. It's a punchy read. It's not Brookings-style boring, I promise. And I encourage everyone to pick up a copy.
I encourage you to do that too. And John Hudak from the Brookings Institute, brookings.edu. And what was that website for your most recent paper?
Brookings.edu/marijuana mess.
There we go. Check it out, folks. Thanks, John.
Thanks a lot.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
The Russ Belville Show is proudly sponsored by the Marijuana Business Association. The MJBA, called by NBC News the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, is the fastest growing business association in the fastest growing industry in America. I've been working with the MJBA for years, and I personally invite you to join the MJBA. MJBA also publishes the popular MJ Headline News on Facebook and the MJNewsNetwork.com and Marijuana Channel 1 on YouTube. Visit mjba.net for more details.
Georgia. Hi, this is Willie Nelson. Alcohol prohibition didn't work in the 1920s, and marijuana prohibition isn't working today. It's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
The next generation of vaporizers has arrived. Vuber vaporizers are blazing the way with unparalleled technology for oil, concentrate, or dry flower pens. Providing unsurpassed customer service and expert craftsmanship, Vuber vaporizers use cutting-edge technology, providing a power-packed, smoother vapor with a lifetime guarantee. Experience vaporizing the way it was meant to be. The Vuber way.
It's time for the Russ Belville Show's Cannabis Q&A with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. Dr. Earlywine is a professor of psychology at the State University of New York at Albany and a leading author and researcher on cannabinoids and health, who pins the Ask Dr. Mitch column for High Times magazine. Get your questions ready in our live chat or call in to 971-533-7111 now.
Welcome, everybody. We are at the Cannabis Policy Summit here in New York City, City University of New York, sponsored by Botech and Mark Kleiman. And joining me here at the desk, we have Pete Holmes from Washington State. Are you still city attorney in Seattle?
I am.
Fantastic.
I'm halfway through my second term.
All right. Glad to have you here. And it's been a while since we've spoken. In 2012, of course, Washington passed I-502, legalized marijuana. We are now going on 4 years into that experiment. What are the results? How do you feel that you were vindicated in some of your positions?
Well, vindication is probably a strong word, but right now we're sweating the details. I remind people that 502 promised legalization, regulation, and taxation, and the regulation part of it is what really does take, it's glorified plumbing. There's a lot of details about what works. Washington was different than Colorado in its approach in that it basically created a legal system from the ground up. And consequently, they couldn't just flip a switch and suddenly there was a sufficient legal supply to meet demand. We're still shy of full capacity under the legal market, and consequently the benefits of knocking out the illegal market just through economic forces, if nothing else, is still to be attained. And in Seattle, though, I think that we are having an extremely good experience that I hope will be replicated across the state. We need more stores. The mayor and I agree about that. We need to legalize delivery services so that they can be regulated as well. But we're finding that we've got illegal delivery systems going on because of that old phenomenon that we were talking about with cannabis to begin with. That if you try to prohibit something that is in such high demand, you will fail. It is an improper, an unwise use of your police power.
In the implementation of I-502 at the very beginning, there were canopy space limits. There were all sorts of recommendations that came from Botech that seemed to be, at least from my perspective as the consumer, counterproductive to my goals. That we had really high prices and not much access. How has that proceeded, and has there been changes? Is there no longer a canopy, or have they changed that?
They have changed that, but I could give you an even more stark example. If you remember, right after 502 passed, there was an open debate about whether they were even going to allow outdoor grows. There was a wonderful debate on Seattle Times, an online debate about the merits, the qualities of warehouse grown versus sun grown marijuana. So, anytime you're a first adopter, you're going to have to, unfortunately, you're designing the plane as you're flying it, and they're going to have to make adjustments. And I think that, whether it was the lottery for license applicants or the canopy formulas, those were things that they were just trying, how will this work? Right now, of course, we're engaged in trying to figure out what do we do with pesticides, and so we're learning on the job. And it's really interesting to watch it unfold. So that's a long, broad, rambling answer to your question, but it is kind of as a wonky lawyer, it is fascinating to me to watch this process unfold, and as we keep continuing to fine-tune it.
You were a big proponent of adult cannabis use clubs as a way to provide the public that can't smoke in a hotel or outside a place to actually use. And Washington State went the opposite direction and felonized such a thing, the most draconian punishment for such a lounge outside of prohibition states. So what is where are we going on that issue? Is there going to be any hope?
Classic example of one step forward and then like a whole leap backwards. That was one of the stupidest examples of legislative overkill I've ever seen. In the same legislation where Washington, finally, the legislature combined medical use and adult use in a single licensing system. That's when, out of the blue, this prohibition on marijuana lounges came out. It was overkill, it was unnecessary, and again, it's an example that there are still vestiges of resistance despite the overwhelming public vote. My hope is in the next legislature, we could not get it done in the 2016 short session, but hopefully in the 2017 long session, we can at least modify that to say marijuana use lounges are prohibited only in cities and counties where they're not regulating them locally. And Seattle's already provided the model for that. My office worked with Councilmember Nick Licata, now retired, for instance, to design a marijuana lounge, use lounge ordinance. It also required not changes in 502, but under our Clean Air Act because of the indoor smoking ban. And we opted for an amendment to allow electronic smoking devices to be used in city licensed lounges. That's our model. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wait a year because of the state prohibition or the state felony. And my hope is that we'll get that. That's going to be top of my list to get that done, along with licensed delivery systems in the next session.
502, you mentioned being, building the plane while you're flying it. You're the first adopter. So there was some caution in 502 in creating a 5 nanogram per se DUID, no home grows, and no lounges. The next 5 states that are looking to legalize don't have the per se DUID, allow home grow, and mandate some sort of licensing for lounges. Do you think passage in those states is going to hasten the change in Washington State?
I do, and I think those states have learned from us. I also think that we will get to a limited universal home grow. We do have to make sure that the entrepreneurs that stick their necks out while there's still federal prohibition, that industry succeeds. A regulated industry, I think, is far preferable to criminal prohibition. So that's why the home grow issue is of concern to some of the retailers. I do believe that the natural progression will be limited home grows for every adult. And that's something that we'll be pushing for in the legislature. The lounges, again, I think that vaporizing technology for both tobacco and cannabis will start to overtake that debate, and people will see that as a harm reduction technology that we should be at least not actively discouraging. So you're right. The other states are learning from us, and we in turn still, I think, have the best model on the ground right now today. And this is all important, Russ. I'll stop rambling, but to say that, it's very much an open question. Will the other 45 and a half states legalize marijuana for adult use? And they're watching to see how Colorado and Oregon and Washington are doing. And I do think that Washington really does have, as it's fine-tuning it, the model of regulatory control that the feds are looking for.
Final question. One of the talking points that we had as far as marijuana legalization went was the disparate impact on African Americans, Latinos. We've seen since legalization in both Colorado and Washington, the remaining arrests are still disproportionately minority, and the people who are making bank in the business are disproportionately white and rich. And there's some feel in the African American community. I was talking to a young activist from Maryland yesterday who said, now we've taken the dealing jobs that used to exist on the street corner and we've moved them into the dispensary in the white neighborhood, and we've is this the success of legalization we want? What would you like to see moving forward to try to address that?
I'll do you one better even. When we made possession no longer a crime but rather a civil infraction, Seattle's experience was miserable out of the box. We must have given those civil citations disproportionately to poor and African American communities at an even higher rate. Fortunately, the police department, that was the work of one or two overzealous officers, and we think that we've corrected that. I was a strong proponent of, as we expanded the licensing, to have a merit-based system that would help to address, when we've got minorities that are involved in the business, if they will bring that operation into the light of regulation, I wanted to see preferences for them. My hope is we'll see that. I've visited one entrepreneur in Renton, south of Seattle, that is hoping to come into Seattle. And I want to encourage minorities. They're certainly going to get support from my office in trying to be a participant in this new regulated industry. It is so important that it reflect the diversity of our communities. And there's the only way to do that is like the rest of this. Check and see how are we doing. Let's monitor and see what are the outcomes for criminal justice. What are the outcomes for people actually getting licenses? What do the demographics look like? Don't be afraid to look at that, and then be really, really honest about what are you achieving. The criminal law is going to start taking a much lower role in this as we shift to civil regulation, and my hope is that alone will help with harm reduction. But there's just no doubt we can't go back, precisely because of what you just said, Russ, that the war on drugs has led to mass incarceration across this country of far disproportionately at minority communities. It has wrecked whole communities. It has made us weaker as a nation. And however cannabis and other drugs start to shape the debate going forward, one thing is clear: we can no longer criminalize drug use. And that is part of the harm reduction technique. Now let's make sure when we regulate it that we see similar results that are actually helping those same communities that used to be disproportionately targeted.
Seattle City Attorney Pete Holmes, thanks for joining us. And if there's anyone in our listening audience in the Seattle area that wants to contact your office, can you give some contact information?
Sure. You can also go to my website is simply seattle.gov/law. There's regularly lots of information there that I post. For instance, the last year's marijuana memo. I'm working on the next one, marijuana policy memo, kind of outlining some of the very issues that we're talking about, where I'm hoping to go in the next legislative session, and close to home, how I'm working with the executive and the city council and the regulators to make sure that we have a viable and well-regulated system in the city of Seattle.
Thank you, Pete Holmes, for joining us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Hey everybody, it's Radical Russ here from 420 Radio, inviting you to be like me and get your ink done at Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo, Fort Worth's most female-friendly, clean, sterile, awesome tattoo shop. Thomas and his crew are true artists who can design you a custom piece or use a design you bring in. Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo also offers all styles of tattooing as well as piercings and all-around fun. in the DFW area, stop by Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo and tell them Radical Russ sent you. Trust me, it'll feel awesome.
NORMAL stands for Responsible Adult Cannabis Use. If cannabis use is causing problems in your life, consider taking a break or seeking medical assistance. Consider ceasing cannabis use if you have a family history of mental illness. Don't drive or operate heavy machinery while impaired by cannabis use. Cannabis use is not without risks, even though the risks may be far less than those posed by legal drugs.
Don't want to spend money on a night out, but don't know what to do other than watching TV or playing video games? Consider playing guitar, bass, banjo, or mandolin. The instrument will give you hours of entertainment with friends with minimal expense. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today, or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com.
We must wage what I have called total war against public enemy number one.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
That marijuana, pot, grass, whatever you want to call it, is probably the most dangerous drug.
Some think there won't be room for them in jail. We'll make room.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it and didn't inhale.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Radical Rant.
And now it's my pleasure to introduce Alex Stevens, who's the chairman of the International Society for the Study of Drug Policy and our partner in putting this on. Alex.
Well, good morning, everyone. The more astute of you will have realised that I am not Rosalie Pecula, as stated on your programme. Rosalie has many other things on her plate and has asked me to take her place in the programme. And as Mark stated, I'm the president of the International Society for the Study of Drug Policy, as well as being a professor in criminal justice at the University of Kent in England. And I'd like to add my comments to Brad's to welcome you all to New York, even though I've only just arrived myself. But welcome to this wonderful event, this opportunity for us all to learn from each other about cannabis policy. Thanks to BOTEC and to Mark Clymer for putting this event together, and to New York University for hosting it. The International Society for the Study of Drug Policy doesn't have a viewpoint itself. It is a forum for the advancement of scholarship on drug policy around the world. And obviously, cannabis is a huge issue within that. And obviously, the Americas are a hugely important region, not just what's going on in the states of the United States, also what's going on in Canada, in Latin America, Uruguay being an obvious example. The eyes of the world are on New York this week for more than one reason. In drug policy, we have young guests coming up, but we also have this fascinating opportunity to learn from what's going on in the Americas region around cannabis policy. The ISSDP is 10 years old now, and we should thank the successes of the ISSDP in advancing knowledge to many people who are in this room who have spoken at previous events of the ISSDP, and perhaps especially give our thanks and appreciation to Peter Reuter, who's the founding president of ISSDP and has done so much to advance our understanding. During this meeting, there will be a stream of panels that are labelled ISSDP sessions. And these are sessions that we've put together by inviting scholars around the world to submit abstracts to present scientific research here. They've been selected on the basis of their scientific quality and their relevance to cannabis policy in the Americas. And there will be some excellent papers. Some of those papers are already available online. If you go to the ISSDP website, which is www.issdp.org, there's a conferences page and there's a password protected area. The password is ISSDPNYU16, and you'll find some of the papers that are being presented in the cannabis sessions there. Members of the Society also have access to most of the papers that have ever been presented at the 9 so far annual conferences, and will have access to the papers that are going to be presented at our conference in Sydney, Australia in May, and in our conference in Aarhus in Denmark in May 2017. In 2018, we hope to return to the Americas for our annual conference following our successful event in Bogota in 2013. So we hope that many of you will become even more involved in activities of the ISSDP over the next few years. If you want to know more about us, you can speak to me, or to Rosalie, or to Thomas Dobransky, or to Peter Reuter, or to Bo Kilmer, all of whom are members of the board of the ISSDP. So thank you very much for coming today. I look forward to learning from you and with you around cannabis policy in the Americas. Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Cannabis Policy Summit here at the City University of New York. And at the desk with us, we've got Daniel Sparks from BioTrack THC. How you doing, Daniel?
Doing great, Russ. How are you?
I'm fantastic. We run into the BioTrack booth just about everywhere we go, but for the people who are new listeners, tell folks what BioTrack is.
Absolutely. So we are a seed-to-sale tracking company. We provide inventory tracking for business owners in the private sector, so dispensaries, cultivation centers, extraction, quality assurance labs. And we also have a traceability version of our software that's currently used in 5 states. So Washington, New Mexico, Illinois, New York, soon to be in Hawaii. And some local governments are currently using our software to track their respective marijuana programs.
It's fantastic. And as the marijuana industry has been developing, there's been a lot of changes that have happened, a lot of new regulations. And for example, my home state of Oregon has come up with a bunch of new regulations this last session. How difficult is that to deal with and to have to adjust to on a session-by-session basis in your software?
It's definitely exciting. It's something that we pride ourselves in. So the changes in the law allow us to improve, allow us to create customized platforms for the given jurisdictions that are implementing medical programs, recreational or adult use programs, and every iteration in between.
That's wonderful. So BioTrack THC involved in, like you said, 5 states now, right?
Yes.
And we've got now with the signature in Pennsylvania, 24 medical marijuana states, 4 legal states, another 5 that may become legal. Looks like a growth market for you guys. Any preview on where you'll be next?
Everywhere and anywhere.
Yeah.
So obviously, like you said, there's a lot of movement that we're anticipating in November. Presidential year, a lot of adult use, medical, all different types of iterations that are going to be on the ballot in various states, and various countries are paying attention to what we're doing. We're sitting in the state that just went medical, and UNGAS is literally this week. So the international community is definitely paying attention, and BioTrack definitely looks forward to contributing to that process in a positive way.
As an employer and a member of the cannabis industry, what does BioTrack do with respect to giving back to the community, giving back to legalization and reform, for example?
I'm glad you asked that. So our headquarters are located in Florida, and United for Care is the lobby in Florida that's pushing for an expanded medical. Amendment 2 is on the ballot in Florida. And as far as our community involvement, we are flagship members of Women Grow. We are definitely an equal opportunity employer, very much a diverse makeup within our company, and we contribute in every way that we can.
Is there a drug testing requirement to work for BioTrack THC?
No, there's not.
Fantastic. That's my favorite answer. Daniel Sparks from BioTrack THC. What's the location on the web if people need to find you guys?
Sure. So our website is biotrackthc.com.
All right. Check it out. Daniel Sparks, thanks for joining us. Have yourself a great conference.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, everybody, to day 2 of the Cannabis Science and Policy Summit here at City University of New York, sponsored by Botech Analysis. I'm Radical Russ. We are in the main hall, and joining me at the desk, we have Dan Riffle, formerly with the Marijuana Policy Project, currently working in the U.S. House. How you doing, Dan?
Awesome. How are you, Russ?
I'm fantastic. I saw your name on a few of these panels here. The next one coming up, Ideology and Industry in the Legalization Process. And this is something that's of great import to my listeners because a lot of them come from the activism side and they see this industry coming in and taking over. And there's some consternation about the fact that we got a lot of guys that know a lot about business, not a lot about weed.
Yeah.
So what are some of those conflicts that you're going to be talking about, and how could we resolve some of those things?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I was a prosecuting attorney before I joined the legalization movement. I see it as a waste of law enforcement resources, and that's why I think marijuana should be legal. But one of the things that Jonathan Calkins said yesterday is that marijuana should be just legal enough. It should be legal enough to meet demand, not so legal as to increase demand. And I see, the industry moving in, and, the industry is a business that sells a product. And the way that any business that sells any product works is to increase demand for their product. So, a lot of the folks here at this conference are looking at other models outside of the big business industry perspective that are, more focused on public health, nonprofit models, B Corp models, government monopoly models, those sorts of things. And, their interests may or may not align with, the consumer interest, but, it might be a situation of strange bedfellows where even though their interests don't necessarily align, they have a common enemy, or at least, a common person or entity that they're suspicious of in the industry.
What Jonathan Calkins was talking about and some of the other presenters I've heard have been ideas that would be about keeping the price of marijuana high enough that it deters extra consumption, but doesn't increase a black market. Trying to find that sweet spot. Is that the idea we're talking about?
Yeah, a little bit of that, and then also just making sure that we don't have, advertising practices that, are akin to what we see with alcohol, where, I can't watch a football game on Sunday without getting drunk just watching the thing with all of the ads. There's liquor store. I live in D.C. There's liquor stores on every corner, mostly in poor and minority neighborhoods. Everybody here is a veteran of the tobacco years in the 80s and 90s with Joe Camel, and trying to increase their market, trying to increase the amount of the product that heavy users use, and those are the type of things that the science and the health people here are trying to avoid, which again is anti-industry, but not necessarily anti-industry in the way that a lot of consumers are suspicious of the industry.
Is it unfair, though, to have that perspective on cannabis when we're talking about people whose experience in public health with alcohol and tobacco? We're talking about two very destructive drugs. Yeah. And with cannabis, this default that if more people are using it or the people using it are using it more, the default of that being bad seems false to me, in that some of those people, some of those new consumers might be switching off of OxyContin, might be switching off of other, making substitutes. Is there an argument for that substitution effect?
So the first thing I'll say is that, on the scale of harms, marijuana is way down towards the bottom, significantly less harmful than alcohol, even more significantly less harmful than tobacco. Those are deadly drugs that kill people. Marijuana just isn't. The harm of marijuana, as Jonathan Calkins put it yesterday, is not an active negative. It's more the lack of a positive. It's the risk that somebody might just be wake and bake all day, and maybe they're functional, but they're not curing cancer or something. And so it's not a huge public health risk. It's not a big harm. For me, I will readily recognize that there are jazz musicians who make beautiful music because of cannabis that they consume. There are artists who paint beautiful portraits because of cannabis that they consume. There are, just abnormally high-strung people who need to relax at the end of the day, just like some people who drink alcohol like to have a glass of bourbon or a glass of wine at the end of the day. And those are net positives to society. But, at the end of the day, marijuana is a drug. Cannabis is a drug. It does have dependence potential. There are people who have cannabis abuse issues, cannabis dependence issues. And, so you have to weigh those things against each other. So, for me, it's a drug. It poses problems. It's significantly less problems than other, more dangerous drugs. But nevertheless, there are risks there that you have to account for and build into your policy making.
I hear them getting ready for the next panels, and I know you're on the next panel, so we better wind this up and let you go. But if people want to learn more about this, do you have any references, resources, or contacts you'd like to give out?
I think if you just go to the website from the conference, there's, myriad links and articles and bios and those sorts of things. So
cannabis-summit.org. Dan Riffle, thank you so much, and
thank you so
good
much,
luck
Russ.
with everything you're doing.
You too.
Well, thank you, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty, for tuning in to this special edition of the Russ Belville Show from the United Nations. The again apologize I can't do the regular live show today with all the constraints that are put upon me, but we'll have plenty more interviews and audio for you on tomorrow's show. For everyone here from CannabisRadio.com in the Big Apple, I'm Radical Russ. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!